Hello, everyone, and welcome to an extra spooky Hotline League. It's a terrifying one, especially for the European viewers of the show, who will be facing the scariest Hotline League they've ever seen. And joining me is a specter from a world that is no more, G2 Mark Z. How's it going, Mark Z?
The scariest thing that's going to happen is NRG getting ass blasted by Weibo. They're not good. They didn't have to be any good teams to get there. They didn't beat any Eastern teams. I'm not coping. You're coping. Our team's better. It's taken you 9 years to get this result. Suck it.
There he is. So he's going to be wearing. They can't see. You need to adjust your camera. There we go.
They saw it. They saw it plenty.
The G2 jersey.
It's your cropping. It's not my camera. It's,
it's definitely not. Hang on. Let me see if I'll push it in a little bit. And people.
No. Yeah.
It's your. Yeah, it's definitely not the cropping, my friend.
Twitter. I don't care.
What is your hat? Is your hat also part of your costume?
No, it's just a hat.
Oh, okay. Well, that's less fun. All right. Anyway, also joining us is somebody who's trying to make a sports joke with his costume. It's Cubby. Cubby, what's your costume?
The Bears are a terrible football team, and they terrify me on a weekly basis. And we're very incompetent. It's brutal.
Well,
I don't have costumes. I'm not a big Halloween person, unfortunately.
Really, you're not a big Halloween. Why? What do you have against Halloween?
So what I used to do for every Halloween is that in college I would actually buy a tacky Christmas sweater and I'd wear it for Halloween and I'd bring eggnog to the party and I'd be like, oh, I got the wrong invite. And I could just wear the tacky Christmas sweater twice because I like Christmas. It was a pretty good party trick.
Okay, that doesn't explain why you don't like Halloween.
It's just like. It's an over. I don't know. I like that one. It's like fun as a kid. Growing up, it's like a good excuse to like party, but I can do that in a tacky Christmas sweater. It's low effort. I don't know.
Gotcha. Well, I should say this is our first ever episode of Hotline League where we are simulcasting to both Twitch and YouTube. So, for those of you that haven't been paying attention, Twitch changed their policy. And so I can now, for the first time ever, because previously, I think a lot of people did not know this, you previously could not, for a while, you could not stream on YouTube at all if you were a Twitch partner. And then they changed it a while back, and some people might have seen me do some live streams, where you could stream, but just not at the same time. And then at TwitchCon, about, 10 days ago, they announced officially that you can stream on both. So welcome to the 326 viewers that we have right now over on YouTube. I will say that the primary viewing experience will probably still be Twitch. I think Mark and I are probably going to be paying attention a little bit more there. I just think, quite frankly, the platform's a little bit better for managing viewership stuff and engaging with folks, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's going to be where we will primarily be. Also, Twitch is, just to be blunt, better at monetizing. And in a year of esports winter, I'll take all the heat I can get from Twitch with their Prime subs and all that stuff. So that'll be there. Twitch will probably still be our primary platform where we're going to be addressing stuff the most. But I do want to thank all the YouTube folks who are tuning in, who maybe in the past, for whatever reason, they don't like Twitch, and now they're able to watch. We're also doing this at a weird time because it's 3 p.m. Mark was unavailable yesterday, and so we're doing a Halloween episode, which is kind of fun, but because I'm going out a little bit tonight. I don't know what Mark's going to be up to, but had to do it a little bit earlier tonight. So, without further ado, there's some cool shit that's been happening. But Mark, why don't you tell us what you've been up to first?
Nothing. Fuck it. Let's talk. I vote. Here's my suggestion for the start of this episode.
Yeah.
We give EU the NA bombed out of groups treatment. Whenever NA bombs out of groups, we come on Hotline League and we spend 30 minutes to an hour discussing all of NA's problems and why we failed. And it's doom and gloom. And I think it's probably only fair to do that now for Europe.
Yeah, I don't think we need 30 minutes to an hour. But I'm down with.
I got a lot of takes. I could go all night, honestly.
There's so much other shit that's to talk about because we weren't able to, because I was traveling last week, and so we weren't able to do an episode last week, even before the NRG stuff. And so, oh yeah, for those that are listening to the podcast, I'm back in LA now. Never landed a sponsor, so went over for the first 10 days of Worlds on my own dime, which was expensive but worth it. But could not afford, unfortunately, to keep staying over there. So I am back in the States. There's a chance I go back for finals if because we're talking to a sponsor that might want me there for the last weekend. But yeah, we're back. But Mark, why don't you go ahead and give us your EU copium, or what I guess it's this EU sad times, right? It's not copium.
The format is to blame. Yeah.
The format is definitely shit because they didn't have to beat any good teams. You know, NA was 5-2 in game score against us, but they didn't actually beat anyone good. So it's really not that NA is good. It's just that we really, really suck.
Oh, we're saying the Worlds
really
format was bad, because I thought you were going to say
Yeah.
the LEC format is bad.
Oh, I was referencing the LEC format. For whatever reason, every time I'm on here, that always comes up. So I feel like we just have to run it again, you know?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, the
That
LEC
too.
format's really good, but it's also really bad. It's really bad when I don't like when something bad happens, and then it's the format's fault, but it's really good otherwise.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I'll say for EU fans who are listening before they take this too seriously. I'm shit posting. I will extend my olive branches about my real thoughts on G2 in a minute, but for now, I am leaning in to the shit postery, and we'll probably discuss it more realistically soon. But yeah, no, that's a great point, Travis. The format held us back both domestically and internationally. I think it's ridiculous that we should be able to get out with the same win rate that Vietnam had in game score. Like, I really don't see why we shouldn't be allowed to get out with a 25% win rate, basically 30% win rate. It's kind of,
I mean, it's just the luck of the draw, right? The format is bad, and
yeah. It was really unlucky that we couldn't beat literally any region at Worlds. Like, we had a losing record against every single region at Worlds. It's really unlucky that happened. I think that we should actually get out. Because
I thought so you are giving the copium. I thought this was going to be the 30 to hour long doom and gloom thing.
That's why I said it's going to take a while, because first you have to have all the copium takes, and then we have to flip it around and talk about how shit we are.
Okay.
But first, yeah, I think based off our scrim results, as you know, which are like the most important thing you can do at Worlds is not what you do on stage, but what you do at prepping for it. I don't understand how we're not through. We should be.
So somebody told I've seen this take on Twitter, actually, because I guess I woke up, I guess Romain had released the scrim scores or whatever, and
Yep.
there are these Twitter trolls that are now going out and just screenshotting the 7-0 NRG, and they're like, oh, or 7-0 versus NRG, and they're like, oh, NRG are frauds, G2's the better team, it was just an off day, blah, 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 blah. And this is the new way to, one, cope about G2 and also shit on North America. It's like, that's the fascinating thing to me. It's like, for at least some LEC fans, because I know LEC fans hate it when we treat them like a monolith, for at least some, this is like, they can't even lose gracefully, right? They're like, oh, they have to come up with this bullshit reason on why they're still better, and even though they did not make it to quarterfinals and NRG did.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those screenshots floating around too. I just say, okay, you know what? Good for you guys. See, you talk about that next week. We actually have other things to talk about because we're playing Weibo. So like, we have other things to focus on. You guys can keep holding on to those scrim results and keep tweeting those at us. My focus has already moved on. What are you talking about? We're talking about quarters, right? What you guys are talking about quarters because you'll be there, Europe.
I mean, also, like, if we're going to self-post, G2 self-posted 7-0 over NRG, who have an easier schedule, so-called. Whereas now NRG gets to go up against Weibo, who they self-posted were the 5 best players at Worlds. So it evens out,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. As someone who has coached a team that is radically better in scrims than we were on stage, let me tell you, there's usually a reason that you can't translate your scrim results. We could identify ours. I hope G2 can do that and identify what went wrong. Otherwise, that's sketch. For us, we were a very reactive team, and in scrims, when people are just going hamburgers 24/7, we just get to punish plays, and that's how we win scrims. And then you go on stage, and people don't act like idiots, and you actually have to make your own plays happen. And we weren't good at that. I don't know what G2's doing to get 80% scrim results, but a bit of a flop on stage. I don't know.
All right.
And you know what feels so good about it too is, the absolute destruction. That 2-0,
dude, the 2-0 was such a stomp. Okay, yeah. If we're now done with the
it was awesome,
dude. If we're now done with the Mark like cosplay meme stuff, like let's just talk about it. Okay. That was amazing. I was so happy. I feel like so many times that shoe has been on the other foot, where like the matchup should be competitive, right? Where it's like our first seed versus their third seed or something like that, and we all go, oh, this should be like a good matchup, and then NA just goes out there and like flops over and dies and does nothing. And it felt so good to see it the other way. And it's also great because it's not like this is the first time that like NA has ever beat EU, but oftentimes it is just like beating up on Mad Lions or something. So the fact that it was the first seed, like the vaunted G2 of all this time. And again, I really like those players.
The West.
So like this is not about me trying to shit on the players. I really actually like that team. But when you just look at it from NA versus EU, first seed, and we just annihilated them. And dude, the amount of people. So like, I won't say who, but after the drawing was done, immediately after the drawing, because I was in the press room whenever that happened, somebody who was at the table with me from another region turned to me after the drawing, and they're like, "Oh, well, at least U2's making quarterfinals." And they didn't even mean as a meme, because they immediately meant like, "Oh, I mean like at least like we'll either get NRG or G2 guaranteed in quarterfinals." And like I think, you know, and I like Cadril or whatever, but I think he was like jumping up and down whenever G2 drew NRG and all this stuff. And so just like the turnaround smackdown, it just felt, it's like it's so many years, and so it just felt so fucking good, man. I had made it to Utah by that point in time, and I was out there for something, and then I was up for like another 2 hours. It was like 4:30 a.m. and I'm like still vibrating from how sick that series was.
I've been that excited since TLIG in 2019, and we're not going to talk about the finals for MSI, but that was the level of excitement I had for just watching NRG like clap G2. And I had G2 winning as like everyone else, right? Like going in, like G2 again coming in, it's like the best Western team, and it's a team that like, I mean, they've garnered a lot of respect for good reason. So the fact that NRG just like clapped them silly for 2 games straight, it was so sweet. It was so sweet.
Yeah. I'll give my real analysis on the series later, but for now, I just have to ask, like, how is Europe so bad? Like, how are they this terrible? I don't get it. Travis, you know, they talk about how, we've been losing for 9 years, you know, enjoy your one. How'd the one even happen? I don't get it. Like,
yeah, that's the thing. Like, it is that thing from those EU viewers or EU fans, it is the ultimate moving the goalpost, because those people were sitting there with those are the same folks who come in and go, oh, NA wildcard team, lol, why do they even get 3-year seeds, or why are we even facing them in this 4th seed battle, whatever. And then the moment we fucking smack down their G2, you know, number 1 seed, and then send them down after all these years of us taking up with it, they go, oh, enjoy your one.
Cool.
By the way, we 7-0 in scrims. We're the better team. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, oh, you fucking little babies.
Well, also,
here's
what I'll say too. I posted a bunch of shit posts on my Twitter, but before I did it, I was like, apologies to EU fans who are about to see all these shit posts. And there's a lot of very chill, normal European fans.
Yes.
This is not.
That's what I'm trying to say. Those loud, obnoxious EU viewers, you know.
Yeah, because I think there's like the 3 groups. There's people who are just not online terminally and don't get this invested and tweet at all, let alone like have super angry takes. Then there's plenty of people who are just like, go off, King, you know, you guys earned it, blah, blah, blah. They're like, you know, we've been talking shit for years. This is your time. There's that group. And then there's just the vocal minority group. I think they're vocal minority. Maybe they're slight, I don't know what they are, but there's a lot of people who are just super obnoxious about it. So those are the ones that we're poking fun at, because to Travis's point, the amount of times I've read NA should be a minor region. What's wrong with NA? Why are they so dog shit? Like all those kinds of things. And then we always there's always Reddit threads the next day about how we're lazy paycheck stealers. We don't care about the game, all these things, It's like, I'm pretty sure a lot of these guys are trying pretty hard. And so it's just hilarious to me that they could get bodied this hard by NA when they have good ping. They have like 3 to 6 times the player base. I forget what the numbers at this point. They have no Hollywood parties to distract them. They have a real tier 2 scene that didn't headshot itself this split. Like their ERLs have been good this whole time. Like I just don't get how a region with so many advantages over us could be so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't
get it.
It is so goofy. And by the way, I should mention, shout out to Alienware for sponsoring the stream. We got so excited about talking about the NRG stuff that I need to make sure they shut them out at the beginning. I do really appreciate their support. We'll talk more about them later.
Weed's not legal in Berlin either, right? Yeah, our players are just perma blazed up.
Yeah, I mean that is we get to now take all the fucking excuses and memes that we've used and use them as like a crutch even against them. It's like we're running them over.
Travis, do you think EU should stay a major region? How many seeds do you think they should lose for this? Because Vietnam has 2 seeds, and one of them has to play through play-ins, and they had the same win rate with their 1 seed.
Yeah, and GAM actually beat us. So
GAM beat us, which is pretty impressive. And GAM also had a pretty hard strength of schedule as well. It wasn't like they were just playing, shitty regions. So
true. So true.
Taiwan, Team Wales beat EU's 4th seed as well in the best of 3.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, I think they should lose 2 seeds.
I think that's fair. I think we even though we couldn't beat them with our 4th seed, I think our 4th seed shouldn't face their 4th seed anymore. We should somehow face Vietnam. I don't know how that logic works, but I'm happy to go as wild as they tend to go.
The only reason Team Wales wasn't in the main stage of Swiss is because they had to play against GAM, their arch nemesis.
No,
and thank God for the whole world that we dodged that double whammy of Vietnam.
So I interviewed FBI and DeMonte. People can go take a look at that interview because I think it was really cool. I know it's already made some of the rounds or whatever, but DeMonte especially giving such a huge applause to G2 before they even knew they were going to be playing them. And so I thought that was really fun that they matched up after that interview. But afterwards, Drew and I were hanging out with Palafox. He was just chilling in the area. He was like waiting for another interview or like a translator to come over. And so we hung out with him for like 10 or 15 minutes over in the media area. And he just felt so confident, not like a cocky way, but just like really confident. He said, I won't say which team, but he did say that he was hoping that they pulled a specific team who I would have thought would have been really scary to pull. But he's like, oh yeah, we can definitely beat them. He just, it stood in such strong contrast to so many of the conversations I've had with players at Worlds. And it was one of those things where it's like, oh, do these guys not know that they're supposed to lose? And obviously, I think some of the other NRG guys have done interviews. I think it was FBI or somebody where they were like, oh yeah, we knew we're the underdogs. We weren't expecting necessarily to win. We thought G2 was going to go through something like that. So I don't want to say that it's a thing that universally NRG was just like, oh yeah, we're going to be so good. But I do think that there was a bit of a different tone in that NRG team. And I have gotten, you and I both, but especially me, I think have gotten flamed a lot from NRG fans for being such doubters of them consistently. And I don't necessarily regret doubting those guys throughout the year because I do think anytime an underdog team wins and then the fans come out and try to be like, oh, they were never the underdog team, like they just never got the credit they deserve. I'm like, that's such a disservice to the actual like accomplishment of this team, like overcoming that. But I do think that moment, that conversation with Palafox, I was like, there's a chance they could win. There's a chance they could get out of this. Like, it's just the tone of him. And that was part of the reason why I was like, I can't catch this NRG game in the morning. I can't wake up and open up the VOD and try to avoid Twitter or whatever and inevitably accidentally open Twitter and see the result. I was like, I gotta stay up and watch this, even though I was jet lagged to hell, and it was in the middle of the night, and I'm so glad that I did because I just was like, I think this could happen. I think it was. The vibe was a lot closer than I thought, or than a lot of people thought, and that was just, it was so fucking cool, dude. I'm so happy, and for that team too as well. I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about what this means for North America and what inevitably team owners will ignore in their roster building for 2024. But I just think it's really exciting. And I think the cool thing is that a lot of people are worried about them going against Weibo, but I don't know. Everybody thought that they were going to lose to G2, so who knows what madness will continue.
Weibo is one of the better teams you could have drawn, if we're being honest.
It's the best by a country mile.
Yeah. I think so too. I would argue that I think KT, because I feel like I don't like KT, like when they get off script, they struggle. And NRG can throw teams off script. But I would much rather draw Weibo. Weibo will have drafts that just make you scratch your head, and they're actually winnable. Like, I think NRG gets at least a game in that series for everyone saying it's going to be 3-0. Like, there's going to be a draft or like a game that Weibo just completely lose their minds, as is tradition, which is the fun of Weibo. So, yeah. We'll see.
I'm hyped.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I don't know if I want to go into serious analysis mode yet, or just keep shit.
No, let's start to get calls. But I think we can overview really quickly some of the other topics, because I know obviously this episode will be very much us talking about that NRG stuff, but I do think it's important to talk about some of the other North American performances, because I think they were all still in when we did our last episode. I think there's been some interesting discussion today where after Romain posted the scrim results, Steve from Team Liquid on Twitter talked about how he didn't like it, and I know that sparked some conversation. Immortals, it was reported by, was it the Sheep or was it Aminatonium? We'll just say Sheep Esports, because I'm pretty sure it's one of the two of them. That Immortals was picking up a mid laner from another region, and Cubby immediately called everyone who was unhappy about that racist on Twitter. So I'm glad to have Cubby here.
Word for word, bar for bar.
Clarify. Yeah, I just skimmed your post, but I thought you basically were saying everybody's like xenophobic and terrible, right? So we'll talk about that. Trying to think of what else is big stuff. I mean, we can retro the Swiss format, because I know that a lot of people have issues with the Swiss format. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. I don't know, Mark, are you starting to pull takes? Maybe we do the spiel.
I just started looking at takes, because I don't know. I have so much stuff to say in general. Do I need to find a take that's about the thing that I want to talk about anyways?
I just don't hear. My worry is we talk about it, then we have a take that's about it, because obviously we're going to have people who have opinions about NRG and all that stuff. And then we have to go over your take all over again. Is it not better to just, if you have something, if you're not seeing people talking about the thing you want to talk about, then obviously
no, there's just a lot of takes. I have to do a lot of reading, and then it pulls me out of talking, and then I have to get back in and remember all this. It's like I just want to talk, man. I've been cooped up, because you were talking, you were first in Korea, and then you were flying, and then you were hanging out with Brandon Sanderson or whatever you were doing, and then you're like, oh well, Mark wasn't around, that's why we didn't do it, as if you weren't gone for multiple days on end.
There were multiple things that happened. Last week we wanted to do the episode, but I was flying
at the start of the episode.
Then one
Mark
night
wasn't around.
I was free. Mark wasn't available. Then the next night I wasn't available, and then the games just started. It became an issue, and then yesterday Mark went to Disneyland. That's why we didn't do it on the regularly scheduled Monday thing. I wasn't going to say what he was doing, but
that's cool.
He wanted to make it a topic.
When Rafa and I did Disneyland, we did 16 rides in one day. Kind of impressive. Just throwing that out there, Mark. I don't know if you topped that one.
I know all the tech. Don't test me, bro. You even know about lightning lane stacking?
You can stack it?
Get out of here, dude. Fucking pleb.
All right. Anyway, Anyway,
I did drink at Disneyland. Correct.
Mark,
Yes.
could we have
for you.
here? Mark, you
What?
last night you messaged me at 12:30, and I think the impression I had at the time was like, "Oh, Mark got back late," and then you leaned into that impression by being like, "Disneyland, go hard." I think was your reply.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get back late last night, Mark?
No.
I fucking knew it. I knew it because you played it that way. You didn't reply to me, blah, blah, blah. And then this morning, I went on Instagram and I saw she had posted on her story. She's like, I got tired and it was hot. And so we went back early. And I was like, this fucker. He saw my message. He ignored it. And then he waited 12:30 to pretend that he had gotten back super late.
I think about you so much more than I actually do. That's not at all. I got your message, and I forget what I was doing. I was either driving back or I was showering, and I just put my phone down, and then I forgot to respond. You think I'm hiding things? I just am not thinking about you.
You son of a bitch. All right. While Mark is pulling takes, thank you to...
Oh, God, I have to pull takes still?
Yes! That's the whole point of this
do it.
fucking show, Mark. Go
You
do
should
the
do it.
dive. If you wanted to talk about Worlds, you could have kept talking about Worlds. You could have done more Worlds work. Instead, you came back to LA. You have to do Hotline League. All right. Thank you to...
All right, I found one. All right, we'll just fucking get this guy on.
No, just I have to read out subs anyway, so just fill stuff up. Thank you to Photo LOL, Shanda Bear, BD Energy for 30 months, Zazeshi, Seaman Demon, a Bronze Broad, Tom Shu for 59 months, almost there. Smitty, Magi Mick, Pilgrim Panda for 2 years, Rat Town, Froggy Sense, Griffin, Chris Million, God Mode, Gillisony. And then I do want to shout out over on YouTube, Rat Town also gifted like 60 subs, which is crazy, or 60 memberships, I should say. So thank you to all those folks. Just know that you get to watch YouTube videos early if you are doing that. And again, a big shout out to Ren for the $100 super chat. That's very, very generous. So thank you. It's been really cool to see support on both platforms. In fact, right now we have 720 viewers on Twitch because we're doing this at a different time. We don't normally have as many viewers, or we normally have a little bit more viewers than that when we do it at our normal time. But we have 550 people over on YouTube, so it's pretty competitive. All right, we got our first caller here, DC the King. DC, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Cincinnati, Ohio. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take is that the Swiss format wasn't as unfair as everyone else seemed to think it was. And even though it looked like NRG had a fairly easy schedule, like if you were to kind of think about if they were in a group, I don't think it was actually like as unfair as normal. Like considering they played an Asian team, they played the first seed of Europe, and then what essentially could be like a play-in team or a last seed of like, PSG Talent or something like that. And like if you said like, 7 Asian teams were going to make the bracket and then one NA or EU team that is their first seed made it, it wouldn't sounded like the craziest take ever going into Worlds. But after watching it, I feel like a lot of people overreacted and were like, oh my God, this was unfair.
Yeah, so one thing I will say is that in our last episode, which we did before Swiss, I was the one that was like, oh, I don't think any Western team is going to make it out. And I was pretty close because only one Western team made it out. But what I did underestimate in this sort of Swiss format where it's like Swiss but double M type deal is how chaotic the brackets, or I guess it's not brackets, how chaotic it can get in terms of the teams that you can get matched up against and how often you can get matched up. It really is sort of this strange little pathway that you move along to get to where you're headed. And yeah, the fact that NRG was able to lose to an LPL team and then just move through the bracket without facing any LPL or LCK again and get out, I think that was something I had not sort of predicted as a possibility. I do like it, and I do think that it is neat because it creates such unexpected matchups, but it is not as difficult, I think, as I thought it was going to be for Western teams to get out. I almost want to say that it's like on par with the way it used to be. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like in the past, you know, if you had one team that just kind of busted out, you could sneak out, and or something weird happened in your group draw or whatever. And I feel like it's about the same. So, Mark, I know you've been talking a lot, so why don't I squeeze Cubby in here really quickly before you rant about the format?
I've been talking a lot.
Cubby, what do you think of the format?
I like it used to be the group of death and the group of life, but it almost feels like we had like the run of death and the run of life. If I look at KT getting through, like KT getting through is pretty ridiculous given the strength of teams they face. And now they're going up against JDG, whereas obviously NRG not facing an Eastern team and getting through is a big discussion point that people have used to knock NRG.
And they did face an Eastern team, to be clear. They just didn't win.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that yeah. That we don't talk about that draft. It's going to be better in coming days. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be randomization. I will say my favorite part about the format has been the draws itself. Like hearing the audience react to it's awesome.
Yes.
It's been so fun actually.
That's actually such a good end to the day.
Yeah, it really is. So I think there can be some refinement, but overall, like my goal for an international event, especially if it is your big international event, is I want to see as many matchups as possible. And I think the biggest thing with this format is that you don't have the second week where it's just rematches. That kind of sucks and takes away like a lot of energy for me. So there were some rematches, but I think that overall teams are playing more teams as a whole. And even with the day where we have like the domestic civil wars, I will still take this over groups. Again, I think there can be a refinement. Maybe there's region lock for like the first 2 rounds moving forward.
Dude, the overreaction to the domestic civil wars was so annoying to me because it's like, oh no, they're gonna play a best of 1 and then head in opposite directions afterwards, right? Like it was just so, like people were like, oh no, a place where a team can play another team from their own region, that's unacceptable. How could Riot ever do this? And I'm just like, this is the most over dramatic reaction to like how this works.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like a lot of people in the old format were also complaining, like, oh, like the seeding's not fair. Like some of these teams should be in the same groups together. And then all of a sudden we get some domestic civil wars in Swiss, and then people go the opposite way.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's so unfair. It's like, well, you thought it was unfair before when you weren't seeding teams for groups, and now it's unfair that they're matching in Swiss. I didn't, yeah. But
I think.
Sorry.
You can find formats that fix the seeding. Like Dota 2 International, the old format, 18 teams, 2 groups of 9. That's how you get the double elimination bracket. The top 4 teams get 2 lives, 5 through 8 gets 1 life, and then 9 gets eliminated. Like, that does fix seeding. But I think given the broadcast schedule, Riot will never overlap games at Worlds, so like formats like that just aren't possible, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
I think there's so many things to fix in the current iteration of this format that doesn't require actual like changes to production workflow. Like you already talked about region locking. I think you can kill rematches. Like there's no reason to KT should play Dom1 twice if you can avoid it. I think you have to put like little asterisks with like if avoidable, teams from the same region don't play, if avoidable, blah blah blah, at least through the first X days or whatever. I think all that would be pretty big improvements. I think seeding, just give Korea 1 and 2 and LPL 1 and 2, all of pool 1. Give LCK, LPL 3, and the Western regions 1 seed, pool 2. Like you can seed differently as well. I think there's a lot of those kinds of things you can do. But that's whatever. I think overall it was a big win. No repeat or no useless games. More diversity of teams played. And the only thing that I actually really want to talk about from this take was the absolute ridiculous mental gymnastics you have to pull that like NRG didn't perform or like didn't deserve it because they didn't beat any Eastern teams. When you look at who you are arguing should replace them, because none of their replacements beat any Eastern teams either. Unless you mean G2, who got absolutely booty blasted by NRG anyways. But Damwon and Weibo did not beat any Eastern teams. They played some and they got blasted usually by the Eastern teams that they played. Weibo beat NRG, Mad, and Fnatic. Damwon beat fucking BDS and Mad. Like, are we going to pretend that deserves top 8 now? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, any fucking path you talk about for NRG is equally as bad with the teams you're saying should replace them.
Yeah,
I also
The
think
only one.
like people talk about Damwon like, oh, they're a dark horse to run the tournament, but like they're the 4th seed from LCK, and I know DRX won last year, but they had a bad season.
Excuse me, Gam.
by
I
all
said
standards.
Matt. I meant to say Gam. Maybe
Okay,
BDS
yeah.
and Gam, not Matt. Excuse me.
Right, 2 play-in teams. But also, I think people are overhyping what Damwon could have done, because if you look at their season as a whole, like Showmaker hasn't looked good the whole season, and he didn't look that good at Worlds. And like their top lane, their support, they're not great. Like I'm
No.
not saying NRG definitely would have beaten them, but it's not like upsetting that they didn't make the bracket.
No, and NRG lost to Weibo in day 1, which is like a problem. But so what? Guess what? BDS and GAM also lost best of 3s in day 1 to then make lower bracket runs in play-ins. Like, losing a best of 1 is not fully indicative of team strength. And now we're going to get a rematch, which will be really exciting to see if, Weibo's better than NRG or whatever. But like, I don't really think any of the teams that would have replaced NRG are substantially better than them, and would go significantly further in the tournament. So like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. All these teams couldn't beat the good Eastern teams, and just because they're from the East doesn't make them better intrinsically. Like they also couldn't beat any of the good tournament favorites, it seems like. So yeah, between the teams that all could have taken NRG or Weibo's spot, there's no good alternatives. So I think Swiss did its job more or less. Like, are all the paths through fair? No, KT had to work a lot harder. And I think it's also fair to say that like NRG at 3-1 got better group seeding than they should have, or bracket seeding than they should have, which is definitely fair. And then that allowed them to draw Weibo, which is something I think that is what's worth talking about. But no one talks about the fact that they got out and got a better seed. They just talk about who they beat to get there, which is the dumb part, because everyone else who is trying, that you're saying deserves a spot better, have the exact same path. They couldn't beat any of the good teams, and they could only beat the bad Western teams.
No, I think that's really well said, Mark. And I really like that take. It's a really good thing to point out. I think that this was the first time, like after seeing how they changed the format and seeing there's just a crowd of people who I think only want to watch an LPL LCK Worlds. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, maybe you can throw in one EU team, but they're just like that. Anytime there's any kind of thing that's not like, hey, what, there was not a chance for an NA team or an EU team to get crushed by like a LPL or LCK first seed. This format sucks. Like, it's just, it's just interesting to me. I think that they're like, yeah, sometimes you draw like a worse path or a tougher path, but that's life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that you should create a tournament where beforehand you're like, hey, we have a suspicion this team is better because they're from a better region, so we're going to like manually construct this system by which they always get an equal or easier path than this other team. Like, at a certain point in time, you can't, your format just becomes scripted. Like, the more layers that you add on it of, oh, this can't happen and this can't happen and this can't happen and this can't happen, like, you just create a system by which you've decided the path that all teams will follow, and it just doesn't really feel like a tournament at that point in time to me. And so,
and
yeah.
The other thing is you can't predict when people are going to have their good games and when people are going to have their bad games. So like, yes, Weibo beat NRG, but then lost to G2, who then NRG 2-0. So yeah, if you just like do these stupid transitive properties interpretations of team strength, then yeah, you can get into loops where there's no clearly better team, and it's like, okay, but G2 got 2-0 into the fucking ground. Guess what? You don't get to move on. That's how sports goes. You can't help that.
Well, like, first off, I mean, my pick'em, the only thing I had wrong was G2 and NRG 1. So, yeah, like, I think, like, from that, I mean, in a way, it's like results justify the means. But yeah, I think the format doing its job is fair. One proposal, though, I'd like to make is something that I have really enjoyed in the past is baseball tried this to make the All-Star game more competitive. The All-Star game in baseball, there are 2 divisions, so there's the NL and the AL, and they play each other with all their All-Stars. They, at one period of time, they made the winner of that game have home field advantage for the World Series to try and make the game more interesting. How would you feel about MSI placement, especially now that major regions are sending multiple teams, have some effect on pool seeding for Worlds later in the year.
I mean, I feel like they've done that before, right? Or they've given extra seeds to Worlds based off of how you perform at MSI. They've done stuff where that happens, right?
Yeah, a lot of the
Didn't
time.
they do a combined like 2-year thing, like over the last 2 years?
But
Yeah, they
never
did
affecting the
something.
pool seeds, like the seeds themselves. Like that's pretty much never changed. Besides,
Well, they did it for NA. We lost our pool 1 seeding before and went to PCS, didn't it?
yes, because of MSI performance.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
PCS was outperforming us at MSI.
Frabbers.
Yeah, Flash Wolves would get out or whatever. So like they have done it in the past, and I think I'm fine with it. You know,
Yeah,
like
there are more teams now. You can go deeper into the pool theoretically.
what I would do honestly is have a floating average of how well each of your seeds performs over the past 2 years, and just assign pools solely based on that. Like if LCK 1 seed on average is placed 3.7, you know, like they get an average placing, and you average it out over the course of these days or tournaments. Yeah, you power rank each team just based off the seed that they inhibit, based off how that seed has performed at the last 4 international events, and just do it based off that. So if there's 5 Eastern teams as the strongest teams expecting the tournament, yeah, fucking see them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't care. They earned it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I think we've probably wrapped up our discussion on this topic. But DC, is there anything you want to shout out here at the end?
Shout out to Alienware, of course. Shout out to Palafox. Last time I was on, I was the call where I said NA mid laners were overrated. So and he smurfed on G2. So shout out to Palafox. And shout out to my wife. Last time I called, I said shout out to my pregnant wife, but we've had our baby. So
Oh,
shout out to my baby.
congratulations.
Cool.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it. Thanks. And shout out to all you guys for doing a great job.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll
for
see
coming on.
Cubby on a Worlds broadcast soon.
Yeah. Have a good one.
All right. See ya.
All right. Off we go to the next caller. Thank you to Stizzle Swick, Classy FTW, and Badger Yar for the 3 subs. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who's supporting both on Twitch and on YouTube today. It's been cool to see. If you're on YouTube, you can become a member for, I think it's about $3. And if you do, you get access to early videos. So, for instance, all my Worlds videos are up right now, including a Faker video. I actually need to check and make sure the Faker video is up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. A Faker video and a interview with Candace from LPL. We have an interview with, with Tabe as well from BLG. So some cool videos over there if you want to go take a look. Otherwise, they'll be releasing later on. So let's see. Mark should be back here any second with a take. Here we go. It's T-Bone, a.k.a. Tom Solomid. T-Bone, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Buffalo, New York.
And what do you want to talk about on the show?
So one of the things that I've been like kind of not seeing on Twitter is people like not really talking about how NRG got the best possible matchup for quarters. And I think that a lot of people are like, oh, it's an LPL team. They'll just kind of smash NRG. And maybe that will happen. Maybe it will. But I feel like, NRG should be favored going into Weibo. And like, I feel like a lot of people should be freaking out over this. I mean, like, NRG actually has a chance. NA actually has a chance to get the semis. And I just don't see people talking about it.
So do you remember that these two teams played each other previously?
I would also argue that there's a thing called improvement, Travis. And we've
sure,
seen
but
improvement in this
we saw these guys play each other too. I'm not saying that NRG is going to lose, but like when you say NRG should be favored, I'm like, it's been about 2 weeks and they lost the last game. I feel like saying favored is a tough pill for me to swallow.
Maybe it is a tough pill for you to swallow, but I just look at the two teams and how they've been playing, and yeah, like you're right. Like I think, like in the best of one, Weibo did win. Like you are correct in saying that, but also the whole point of best of ones is they are not indicative of overall performance. I mean, like even G2, I think G2 was a very different team at the start of the tournament, even though it wasn't that long ago than they were this past week.
Okay, so if best of ones are not indicative, what is indicative? Like why what overrides the best of one in your mind?
The best of 3 versus G2.
Okay.
I would also say you could lump in the other 2 best of ones where NRG played a lot better. It was against TL and Mad, sure, but at least they didn't look like their brains were on fire.
They had playable drafts in those games too, because the draft against Weibo was heinous.
It was heinous, and they also just played like shit. Like I think
the game was over wave 3.
Yeah.
So Mark, you agree with the idea NRG should be favored?
I don't know about favored, but I don't think it's as ridiculous a claim as I think most people would react to based off that. I think NRG has always been a pretty variable team in terms of their performance. They can sometimes go out there like there's 3 phases of the variableness of NRG. First is their drafts. They like to cook, and sometimes they cook up dog shit, and sometimes they cook up the smartest draft you've ever seen in your life. I think, for example, the G2 Game 1 draft was really smart. Not only does the Tom Kench Center work in the bot lane, but it also neutralizes Syndra, which is one of the power picks in the meta. And like, I don't know how G2 is supposed to win that game if NRG is playing well. Sometimes their drafts are bad as well. Secondly, there's like an individual variance that this team has where like, not that they're not like Insano trying to solo kill you 24/7, but like sometimes they just go for dumb plays and they kill themselves on like individuals, or just like the individual plays bad. And then there's also like team variance where like these guys are really, really aggressive and sometimes they're just going for plays that they shouldn't go for. But like when no one's playing individually bad and they have a good draft and they are able to like actually see the game the same way and all going for the same plays, they're really, really fucking good. Like actually best in the West, no cap, no G2. Like I think G2 underperformed that series, and we'll get into that I think a little bit with a G2 take later. But like when NRG is playing their best, they literally probably beat everyone in the West. And that's exactly what happened. And anyone who thinks differently probably didn't watch enough NA. If you don't think that NRG, when they're playing well, are legitimately one of the best teams, you're actually trolling. I don't think you actually watched NA if you don't think that. Because, as people are saying, Contracts is fucking crazy. Like, what Contracts did that game, he has done all summer split. Where the fuck have you been if you haven't seen him do that yet? Like, he literally pissed Smurfed all over Contracts, all over River. He has done this all playoffs long. Same with Palafox. Those 2 guys have been
Contracts
on fire.
Piss Smurfed all over Contracts?
Did I say Contracts? I meant Blabber. Blabber and River, the number 1 and 2 junglers in the NA. He crapped all over them. Palafox did the exact same thing in playoffs to every mid laner. Like, this is what these guys do when they're playing well. That's not to say that they always do it. Like I said, they're a very variable team based off all these factors. But like when they're on, they absolutely clap cheeks. They're the best mid jungle duo in the West. It's a fact that they're not always on that level, but when they are, that's what they do. And if you don't think that, you just didn't watch enough NA. And that was always my concern in the group stage, because I had a little bit more faith in some of C9's players to perform on the international stage. It was just a question of if it would translate to an international stage. And guess what? It just fucking did. It just did. They just beat G2. So you can't say like that's a concern anymore. Now going up against Weibo, if they play at that level, I actually do think that they can beat Weibo pretty convincingly, even if Weibo's not playing well, because Weibo doesn't always play well either. Like both these teams have pretty large variances in their performance. I think it's a really hard series to predict, but I think it's a lot closer than people are willing to admit, because NRG isn't supposed to be good, which is what I've been saying for the last year, and I keep getting proven wrong. So like,
if anyone knows about underestimating NRG, it's Mark.
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a full best of 5, as people are saying. Guess what? They ran NA out of nowhere as well. Like, it happens with them. They sometimes perform really fucking well. I can't help it.
Hard to say if the people arguing with you in Twitch chat, Mark, are haters or if they're NRG fans who are doing the whole "don't believe in them."
Don't believe in the thing. No, I'm not going so far as to say that I think NRG's favored, but I think someone can have that perspective, and I wouldn't even think it's that wrong with how sus Weibo is sometimes.
I mean, we were talking about team strength earlier, and I mean, this reminds me of the draw. I think it was 21 Worlds where Gen G got C9, and like each team one or the other, right? Because like they're probably the 2 weakest teams that made it into quarters, and I think I would make the same argument for NRG and Weibo. Like, Weibo can be an amazing team, but also like I don't have faith in them to go farther than semis against Gen G.
No, I think.
So yeah,
Sorry, yeah.
but
I think
it's playable. That's the point.
it's playable.
It's more
Yeah,
playable than other matchups.
I think the other matchups for both these teams are unplayable.
Yeah.
I think both these teams lose pretty convincingly to every other matchup, and they're both ecstatic that they drew each other.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'll also say that, like, if we're going to talk about recency, more recent, the game one that Weibo had against Fnatic, their draft was also heinous and got destroyed. And Weibo will shamelessly play themselves, which I mean, a lot of LPL teams like do this. It's like traditionally, like they'll play their style and force it when they can. This team is really good when they're able to dive lanes very early on. But they picked like a full dive comp into Oriana, Aphelios, Milio, and got rinsed. So it is beatable, and I think NRG, like, when they're at their best in NA, I think that they do play mid games rather well with like how they play the map and with contracts, and that is the spot where Weibo, if they don't have the start that they want, they've punted games in the LPL, right? So I like it. Yeah, it's much more playable than I think what people are giving it credit for. That said, I probably have Weibo 3-1 or 3-2, and I'm gonna go with 3-1 because this team does some ridiculous stuff if you've seen LPL, and they really make you scratch your head at times, even more so than NRG from watching both. I think I've seen some ridiculous games over there, man.
They are definitely, I think, the more ridiculous of the two teams.
Yeah.
I think with NRG, at least I can usually see what they're thinking, even if I'm like, oh, that wasn't right,
Yeah.
But
Weibo you can't.
No.
It's tough at times, but that's also what makes them like really fun, and why a lot of people just straight up love this team.
Yeah,
I'm
Weibo 3-2 as well to keep the faith for NRG. I do think, just they're probably too inconsistent. I feel like NRG are gonna punt a game through draft. They're going to punt a game through hands diff, maybe, where the Shy and Xiaohu just do something, or Light even, pop off. Yep. Any three of those guys, I can believe, will 1v9 a game at some point or something. Then the third game will be a slobber knocker at a Baron throw. That's how NRG loses 3-2.
I have doubted NRG all year long, and I have been wrong every step of the way. And that is why I now am pleased to announce I am predicting NRG 3-2 to take the series and move on and bring North America to the semifinals. That's what's up, baby. They finally convinced me. Surely they would not let me down now.
Travis,
surely
did you not get the memo?
They would not
check your emails, Travis.
Do this to me at this point in time.
At least you're not doing this to KT,
People say don't get excited for KT. They made it. They won. They won the games they needed to.
It did.
I'm just trying to make all those NRG fans.
You want to talk about fraudulent runs to quarters? Can we talk about KT for a second? They didn't have to play a single Western team. They didn't have to play the powerhouses NRG or G2. Excuse me? How fucking fraudulent?
I think they lost games to get better draws, personally. I think it goes that far.
KT beats Damwon and beats Weibo, 2 4th seeds, and then they draw Damwon again. They literally only beat 4th seeds to make it.
They literally owned Damwon the entire split in LCK. They just had to beat someone they already owned.
They 5-0'd them.
Yeah.
Right? They 3-0'd them, and then they played them twice here, and they beat them 2 more times.
Yeah.
What is this shit? That's the easiest draw. Like, imagine NRG just drawing fucking Golden Guardians multiple times and being like, oh, yeah. Or G2 drawing BDS twice and being like, oh, yeah, well, okay. They really earned it there, guys, beating their 4th fucking seed from their region twice. Really impressive stuff. KT with the luckiest draw, and all their fans are like, oh, it's so hard. We had to play 4th seeds over and over again. Oh.
Anyway, T-Bone, thank you for the
people
call.
People who think I'm serious, God, just like, please understand sarcasm. They obviously had a hard draw, but I think actually, unironically, it does expose, like, that could be an easy path with different 4th seeds or different teams, depending on, because being able to play the same team twice, who was a 4th seed, can be a little troll.
T-Bone, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are going to be shouting out the powerful genius Palafox tonight, but I want to give a shout out to another NRG former mid laner. We are truly living in Tanner time right now, and I want to shout out the assistant coach who has made this victory happen and will make another victory happen soon. Tanner DeMonte, you are the greatest assistant coach in the history of League of Legends. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Thank you so much. See, now all these NRG fans are this. You can't get it right with NRG fans. I'm getting flamed by NRG fans in both the YouTube and Twitch chat, and yet all throughout the year, I've been told I'm so biased against CLG. I'm so biased against NRG. It's just they either if you vote in either direction, they get
Yeah,
angry.
but at least be consistent, you know, because like if they're flaming you for not believing in them, it's because they believe. But now that you're there too, it's like, bro, get off the bandwagon. You missed it.
They
The
convinced
bandwagon
me.
has departed. It's departed the station. You can't just chase down the bandwagon and hop on the back of it. All right, get off the bandwagon. Say Weibo 3-2 like a real man, like Cubby, or like me, and Cubby said 3-1 even.
Sometimes a hypocrite is nothing more than a man in the process of changing.
And sometimes he's ruining it for everyone who was right the whole time. Get off the bandwagon, Dalinar.
All right. Anyway. We're going to take a quick break to talk about Alienware. Everyone, please go check out alienware.com/Travis. I don't know if we're able to put that link into the YouTube chat. So if I can't, then you're just going to have to manually open up your browser and type that in. But if you do, go to alienware.com/Travis. Check out their Aurora R16 gaming desktop. This thing is the most advanced and most powerful desktop yet, and it's perfect for new gamers and live streamers alike. That's me. I'm a live streamer. This thing is just fantastic. I absolutely love it. I have it. They sent me a loaner that I've been testing out before they send me one to keep a little bit later, and it's on this desk next to me. But it's been a fantastic PC. We've done some editing on it. We've done some other stuff, and it's just super nice. I think in the past, some folks say, "Oh, I want something a little smaller. Maybe the R15 is a little too big." Well, the best thing about this thing is it's got a streamlined design to be a little bit more minimal and efficient while still making improvements in every category. So that's been one of the fantastic things that I've had in experiencing this computer. Really like the R16. I've had some folks message me telling me that they've picked one up or they're going to before the end of the year, and it's a great time to be keeping an eye on this and learning a little bit more about it, especially as we get into those holiday deal season stuff. So I know some of you folks might be saving up money, taking a little bit of time and waiting to see that stuff pop. And obviously, as always, it's a great time. Alienware has Black Friday early deals, I believe, that have already started right now. So you can go take a look at those as well. So thank you so much to Alienware for sponsoring this show. Really appreciate them and their support as always. Yeah, I'm looking on right now. I see on the Alienware Black Friday section, they have a R16 that's marked $250 off. So already some sales hitting now. Anyway, thanks again to Alienware for sponsoring the show. All right, let's shout out a couple of subs. We have Badger Yar, Big Romulus, Mad Fishy, We Just Played, Tony Killer, and Hippo Squirrel. Thank you for the subs. And then over on YouTube, Big Juice Reviews became a TGI intern. Again, thank you to everybody who are subbing to the Twitch channel or becoming interns over on YouTube. Really appreciate it. And we've got our next caller here. It's Yami. Yami, where are you calling from?
DC.
DC, and what do you want to talk about on the show?
Okay, so I'm calling in to talk about G2 posting their scrim results on Twitter today.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, so my take is basically that G2 posting their scrim results is wildly disrespectful to the teams that they played against, because it both undermines those teams' ability to keep their secrets, their prep secret from other teams who are scouting, trying to do analysts, look at who they're scrimming, see what they're testing, that kind of thing. And then two, the way that they were posting it very much has felt like they're trying to say, like they're trying to use it as a shield against their actual performance on stage. And one, I don't really think that's necessary. G2 performed well at Worlds, but two, it feels kind of insulting and also ridiculous to post scrims like, look at we 12-0'd Gen G or like 7-0'd NRG, and it's like, yeah, but you didn't win against them on the day. Why do we care about this? And yeah, I was kind of incoherent.
No, you're good. I mean, it's as always. It's just nice whenever somebody shares their opinion. Obviously, if you feel like as the conversation continues, if you want to chime in and clarify, I think that's fine. The only thing that I do want to ask you before we get into the super conversation is like they kind of do this. They're just known for doing this all the time. I think they've been doing it all year, and I think they might have even done it last year. I forget though. And so when you say that like it feels like they're using it as like a shield. I guess admittedly they've had good results throughout the year, but it's like if like I as soon as they lost, I saw people in the Reddit thread saying can't wait for them to post it. I feel like people would be hard flaming them if they didn't post it after results like that,
My understanding is they usually post it after the tournament that it's for is over, so like at the end of playoffs or at the end of a split, as opposed to like in the middle of a split or in the middle of like Worlds when them, like, kind of like what TL Steve was saying in his tweet responding to it, like where them leaking who they're scrimming against can give teams who have like, like teams have scouts and analysts who they're paying to like comb through every single piece of evidence that they can find on every other team that they're playing and try and like piece together what their drafts might be.
Sure. Last question here. I do all these interviews. Everybody does all these interviews with their players, all sort of pseudo leak those results, where I have C9 players being like, oh, ask Faker how those games went, or where players say scrims are going well, scrims aren't going well, blah blah blah. Like, do you take issue with that stuff too?
I think it's different when you're able to like pinpoint the exact times that the scrims are happening, because that's able to say like, oh, TL went 0-2 versus G2 yesterday, and then they played us the next day, and they were picking this. So maybe that's something they're like trying to prep or something, or maybe that's like they're trying something. I don't know. I mean, that's a fair point. I think that like it is a more granular level of data, but I agree that like players leak stuff all the time. They probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I think to Travis's point, they do post something similar all the time, like at least this year, and I thought they did it last year too, but I could be wrong. But like September 10th, Romain tweets out the teams that they played against, which one's canceled, and their win rate, which is 80%, though they don't include specific scores against teams. And so I think I land in the middle of the road with this one, where like they always post this stuff. I think to the point about they usually post it after the tournament. I think they usually post it when they're eliminated, but usually they go further in tournaments. So like I could be wrong, but I think their MSI one, after they lost in quarters, they posted it that week. I could be wrong since it's so long ago, and I'm too lazy to track down multiple dates to line them up. But like either way, this is what they do, and they would have got flamed if they hid their results this time. So I think it's fine that they did it. I think the thing that's weird is how much more info they put out this time, where it is very, very much don't flame us, please. Look, our scrims were good, and look how hard we worked. Which like it's your prerogative to avoid, flame this way, but I do think it's a little cringe, to be honest. Like I think if you posted exactly what you normally post for these sorts of things, then go for it. But to like go into all this excessive extra detail about how you 7-0 NRG this time, or beating the good teams this much, whatever. I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about it. The one that's weird to me is people being like, it's not fair to other teams. And like on the one hand, it is kind of weird to post teams' scrim results so publicly. But like I think people already, based off scrimming, have a good idea of how they feel about different teams and stuff like that. And it's not like their picks or anything.
Yeah.
So like I don't. It does feel like a bit of an overreaction for people who are acting like it's a big scandal. I just think it's cringe more than like it's a scandal.
I mean, if anything, it is a quote retweet of, also G2's schedule leading up to LEC Summer Finals, where they are blasting every EU team. So by logic, NRG is better than the EU teams that also are not there too. which
I'd
I
say
like
that's a really good
personally.
point, Covey. I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that point a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I found the MSI ones from May. He just said versus all teams, 62 games, 63% win rate, versus LCK, LPL, 29 games, 52%. So in MSI, they also kind of included the competition, though they didn't say specifically which teams they were.
So I
beating or
saw on
not.
Kadrill's, like a clip from Kadrill's stream where he was looking at the result, that like literally scrim results for every team for throughout the entire year that they faced. Did he dump all of that just today, or
He
was-
dumped all that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, today.
So he's like, here's our
bef-
full year, and in the past it's been more vague.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification then. Covey, what do you think? Do you think this is something that is unfair to the team still in Worlds? Like if you are NRG or T1 or, Genji, are you annoyed about this?
I just don't care. Like I mean, like for background, like I had coached a collegiate team, right? Like I like been slightly like on the inside of like not anything like super high level, but I mean, we were like non-scholarship and took games off Maryville when we could. Just not terrible. Scrims do not matter. Like if you're like sharing the win loss of a scrim, I really don't care, and it really doesn't matter. Like what matters in the scrim is, are you using the time to improve as a team? And frankly, if you're winning every game, then like I don't think that you're gonna like. I usually learn more from losses and struggling. But like it's up to you with how you dictate practice. And I mean, yeah, if you're playing games to like, as Mark was talking about earlier, like scrims are usually played much faster, where players are trying things and testing things. Whether that's like picks in the game, runes they take, plays they're gonna go for. Like games just get way crazier. Like if that's your purpose, then that's fine. You might win or lose a lot of games. If your purpose is like the goal of scrims is to have a purpose. Like none of the info shared gives anything bad away besides the teams they practice against, and they're out of the tournament now. So like the only valid argument I could say is like, hey, maybe wait till the tournament's over. But even then, like none of that info that they gave matters to me. Like I don't care.
Yeah, the question is like, what's actionable from this information going forward? And the answer is none of it. Like the most you can do is like try and read that like, hey, T1 was the one destroying G2, so maybe T1's like a favorite now. But like as we just said, scrim record doesn't really matter for like strength, because what teams are doing in scrims can wildly vary. Dom was tweeting about how like, I think it was Dom who tweeted this, like when you're prepping for an opponent, you will ban what you think you will ban against the opponent that you will be playing against. You don't ban versus the team that you're scrimming against. So like if I'm not playing against G2, I'm not banning Draven and scrims. Like go fucking ahead, play Draven. I might ban it if it gets annoying because that's all you're playing. That's when I'll start banning against my actual scrim opponent, when they're playing things that I don't think my actual opponent will play. Sometimes I'll ban their stuff, but for the most part, I'm putting in the bans that I think I'm going to put in on game day. And like, yeah, you can beat me with picks that I don't give a fuck about. Like you're not like, if Hans is the only person playing Draven and he's slamming Draven in scrims and they're winning tons of Draven games in scrims because no one's banning Draven because they're not playing G2, like guess what? On stage, Hans Draven gets banned and I don't have to play against Draven. So like, yeah, I don't give a fuck how you're like, there's so much non-information in here that like it's really hard to tell if G2 was just being done with their scrims. Maybe they were scrimming really well and they underperformed on stage. Like I really can't make heads or tails of anything here other than they had a pretty good scrim win rate. But like, again, who cares?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like you don't know what the scrims are being used for, and that is what matters, right? So I mean, I think it's fair. Like a lot of people pointed out, and I do agree that when you took away certain picks from G2, a lot of the times that team played through bot lane. When you took away a couple of their core bot lane strategies, they didn't do as well, and they didn't choose to adapt to the tournament meta that we're seeing now, which is like Xayah was the dominant pick of the meta. People are willing to play more Xayah counters now because guess what? Teams are probably practicing how to play in the Xayah. Because like if I'm going into a set and I'm like, fuck, I'm red side next week. Like I have to give over some OPs, right? Everyone's gonna first pick Xayah. Like, how can I beat Xayah, right? Like that's a legitimate way to like use scrims for that upcoming week. Like, okay, what answer is gonna be playing to this champion, right? Like we're gonna figure out like actually like how to beat this, right? You're probably gonna lose games doing that. But like again, it doesn't really give away the purpose of what the scrims were for. I don't care about anything. Like, cool. They played a lot of solo queue games and they won scrims. Good for you guys, right? Like, I'm glad you worked hard.
And NRG had like a 30% win rate in NA, and they were 2-12 against G2. It's like that kind of tracks. What is 2 and 12? Let me do the math real quick. 10% basically, or 16%. Yeah. Like, yeah, NRG fucking grief scrims apparently, and I can totally see how that happens because they're an uber aggro team, and so like in scrims, there's not a fight that they don't take, and they are just burger flipping 24/7, and they lose a lot of games, and then on stage they cut out 30% of their worst plays because they play slightly more reserved, and suddenly they're a way better stage team, which is like the inverse of what my teams had problems with, where we're really safe, and like in scrims people are crazy and we beat them. Like there's so many things that go into how a team performs that like. Yeah. Again, it doesn't really matter. And like I always liked Romain tweeting who was canceling on them.
That is the best part, actually. That is the most useful info.
When he tweets who's canceling like six out of 7 scrim sets, you're like, damn, like call those fuckers out. It's like I'm not mad that he tweeted this. I just think the extra level of detail to like justify their performances versus certain teams was like a little cringe. But like whack. Again, that's it. It just feels like they're trying to hide from the fact that they sucked ass on stage.
I can't even say they're hiding from it, though, because, like, the only difference is that they tweeted it out now instead of at the end of the tournament, right? So, like, it's not like this is something that's brand new, where it's like, oh, like, we lost. Look at how many scrims we were winning. We were actually doing really well.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, we also have Kelsey in the chat, right? Like, she said that FlyQuest had an absurd, like, 75% win rate in scrims in summer. And it was, like, the narrative with FlyQuest this entire summer was like, well, we are winning a lot of scrims. Like, we just don't know what's going on stage. Whereas in spring, they're also like, hey, we're actually losing a lot of our scrims. We just keep on winning on stage. So that's pretty cool. So again, like, it's really more about how you use the practice and what kind of team you have. Like, you might have a team where if you go 0-5 on a scrim day, like, fuck, your team's depressed, right? Like, if you're 0-4, like, you're like, all right, we're going to play our OPs just, like, go out on a high note, right? Or we might have a team that, like, goes 0-5 and they don't give a shit. Like, it also just depends team to team. It's just not relevant.
So I think that sounds like the takeaway is scrim results don't matter. Scrims matter. Is that a fair way to say it? Because people keep going off on this like scrims matter, scrims don't matter type thing. But like scrim results don't matter. Scrims matter. Yes?
Yeah. Practice matters, of course. One final thing I'll tack on here, because I don't think we have another G2 take pulled, is just on their general level, I think they're a really good team.
Sorry, before we get into this, I have one last thing here to ask you about this stuff.
Go.
And I love Steve, but I just want to put Mark on the spot. Mark, what is more cringe? Romain tweeting out those results or Steve quote tweeting it and complaining about it after being eliminated? Which of those two would you say is more cringe?
I think it's a tough battle.
Don't do my man Steve like this.
I think it's pretty equal because one team's trying to shield themselves, it feels like, from criticism by like over explaining their scrim results, and the other team, I don't even really know what Steve's mad about. Like I saw his tweet, I read it, but I'm like, what are you upset about here?
I just don't care. The team that wins the scrim is the team that gets more out of the practice.
Because that's the thing is, when I read Steve's tweet, I was like, I don't understand. Like, I am biased towards more transparency, right? Like, hey, it's great for us to all be able to talk about this stuff and like to have discussions. It's like good content and it sparks discussion around worlds and all that stuff. So I'm biased towards that, and I'm like, maybe I'm missing something from the team side on like how this is really bad, or like, it punishes people who stream them. But I just don't. I've yet to understand it. It sounds like you guys don't have anything there, and so I'm just sort of like, I don't. It looks pseudo salty, like I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think it's pseudo salty. I think Verbal Horse has a good call. Steve is trying to distract people from the fact that TL got knocked out by Gam. Look at this controversy, guys. Don't look at us losing to Vietnam in the best of 3. Yeah.
I know that Mark was going to talk about how G2 like looked good at the tournament, and I just want to like circle back and be like, agree. Like, G2 are out in quarters, but it's not like they played shamefully by any means. Like they were a good team and fun to watch. Like their post plays they tried some really creative shit in post plays, and it's why I love watching G2 and LAC, and I'm glad they brought that to Worlds and caught some teams off guard. They're a fun team to watch.
I think the same way that like I can flame people who don't watch NRG and not realize that Palafox and Contracts can hit that level pretty consistently, I can also flame anyone who doesn't think G2 underperformed in that series. Like, goddamn, just look at them literally the next day versus BLG, where, yes, they still lost that series, but they were playing way better. They absolutely underperformed versus NRG. I don't know if they underperformed to the point where NRG like loses that series if G2's playing well, but it shouldn't have been a 2-0 Giga Stomp. Like, G2's not that bad, guys. Come on, let's be honest here. Let's G2 should have at least made that a 3-game series with even the level that NRG was playing at. Like, there's no reason that they should play that bad. I don't know why they did. People are saying they underestimated them. Maybe sometimes you just play bad, like, and you get in your head, or like, I don't know. People say they're sick, whatever. I don't really care about like the specific non-in-game reasons, but like, because people have been sick plenty of times in the past, and you never know what's going on with every single team. But like, they clearly showed a higher level before that game, and then immediately after that series, they showed a higher level as well versus BLG. Again, I think when NRG's on and hitting on all cylinders, that they are probably have like the highest ceiling, it seems like, in the West. Like, they fucking clap people when they're playing well. But I don't think G2 was playing well.
I just noticed a Reddit thread complaining about how many games G2 played versus the worst LCK team. And I
saw that one too, dude.
It's so nice to
funny.
see them pulling and scooping out the NA specials after Buster got at Worlds. I mean, we were memeing about it at the start
G2,
of the show, but
They only played T1 once.
It's so fucking funny to see.
We only played 99 competitive games where LCK played 85. Bro, I think NRG played like 45 games, if even. NRG might have played 40 games this whole year. I wouldn't be surprised if they had half the games of G2.
40 games, Hollywood parties, and that good kush. NA just had to come to Worlds, man.
Yeah, it's so funny to hear the reason that they lost against... Bro, you didn't lose against Gen G. You fucking lost against NRG. Do you even know who you lost against? I mean, they did also lose to Gen G, but like, they're not who knocked them out of the tournament. Fucking Cope here is unreal. I love it too. I can in one breath say G2 underperformed. They're clearly better than what they showed versus NRG. But then I can also say, like, shut up, because it wasn't that close anyways.
Yeah, I think it's so funny. I mean, they need to get the spinner. I don't know. How can we modify the spinner for EU? That's what the start of the show should have been like.
Those results to avoid criticism.
I don't know what the German equivalent of LA celebrity culture is, or the Berlin rave party. They rave a lot there, so like they get caught up in Berlin rave culture,
smoking cigarettes, walking around with their open container laws, drinking beer.
So
I don't know
true,
what they're
man.
doing,
Dude, popping Molly. Anyway,
fucking wearing all black and going to art house cinema. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a struggle for EU players. They need to. That's why LEC should be relocated from Berlin to
more
Frankfurt.
Central location for better paying.
Okay. Anyway, Yami, thank you for the call. Sorry, I know we kind of went all over the place with this, but anything you want to shout out?
Okay, I have two shout outs actually.
Yeah.
So the first one is I have some cope for EU fans, which is NRG only beats good teams, and the fact that they beat G2 means G2 is a very, very good team.
True.
My second thing I want to shout out is I want to shout out Weibo, because there is no world, no universe, no timeline where NRG wins this. 3-1 is possible, but WG do not throw if they get overconfident. When it matters, WG is always clutch. They're going to win this series. It's going to be like a easy stomp. NRG has no chance, and I'm not saying that because I'm superstitious.
Very
Nice.
good. Thank you so much for the call, and we will catch you next time. All right. We're going to take a quick break here as Mark goes to grab the next caller. I do want to say, by the way, YouTube. You guys are like, why don't you stream on YouTube more? YouTube's so good, blah, blah, blah. I think there's probably been about 80 individual contributors on Twitch who have subbed or primed or something like that. I'm pretty sure Rat Town, that we have 62 new members on YouTube. I think 60 of those all came from one person. So I think there's probably like 4 or 5 different people who have done something over on YouTube. This is why Twitch is superior. You guys want to talk about YouTube, but this is where it's at, YouTubers. Get wrecked. Although it is pretty cool that we have just 100 shy on YouTube of our Twitch number. I'm going to start playing them against each other. That's how you monetize.
Love how you're flexing your new freedom of speech on this platform.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have our next caller here, and it's Colonel Panic. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis, Missouri. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I want to talk about, with NRG's success, there's a lot of conversation around specifically imports and NRG's domestic talent success. I think that none of the teams in LCS are actually going to learn from the domestic talent used in NRG. I think that's proven with the Immortals Mask rumor right now, them importing a Korean mid. They also have a rumor for Armeo, which I think is fair, but I think with Immortals specifically, there's kind of that context that they're a 10th place team. They're just not good. They're the kind of team I would expect to look for lessons. Like if TSM or Cloud9 imports a mid, that's another day that ends in Y. But with Immortals, them importing a mid when they could look for domestic talent just feels like, okay, well, you have no fans, you have no brand, you have no proof of systems. Why should you be importing another mid laner?
Because you have no systems. Because I think Palafox and Dokla and those guys like improved in environments where there was a system to help them out. And if Immortals doesn't have that, then just grab randoms off the rack, you know?
I suppose, but that's kind of been their plan for the past few years.
No, that was a meme. That was.
I mean, but it's a meme, but it's also somewhat true. I mean, you look at these teams that have been able to develop talent, and they've done it by building around that concept. And I wonder now what is more. I think we used to say, hey, you'll save money by creating a system by which you can develop talent because you won't have to overpay. But now that salaries are crashing, I wonder if there is a world where developing talent and building out a big coaching infrastructure and all that stuff is more expensive than just pulling random player from another region and bringing them over. It's something I hadn't really thought about yet, and is also very depressing.
But Travis, what if things crash so hard that not all teams are able to get the visas required to have imports?
Ooh. Yeah, what is more expensive? A domestic talent that'll take minimum, or an import talent that'll take minimum, but then you have to pay for lawyers to go do stuff.
But Travis, the thing that you're forgetting is that the import talent will just be straight up better than the native talent.
That is true.
That's what you've forgotten in that.
We
equation.
really are racing to the bottom here. How much could we pay? Very little. How could we pay the least amount for the worst results? I think is the new strategy in the LCS. Okay, so Cubby and I are on kind of different. I feel like this is mostly going to center around the mid lane stuff, and I think Cubby and I are sort of two sides of the same coin. Here, because I saw your post, Cubby. Why don't you go ahead and explain what your post is, so that the people who haven't seen your tweet know sort of what your reaction was to all the conversation around what is remind me of the name of this mid laner? Mask, yeah.
I made a post because this is the first rumor of the LCS offseason. It was rumored that Mask is going to IMT. I haven't seen any tape on Mask, but every offseason, when I talk with GMs, there is a role where GMs just go like, "Hey, this is kind of hard to figure out." Like last year, that was AD. And one of the reasons it was AD is because the three best ADs that we had in our developmental system were Howry, who got promoted for Danny at the end of the year, and then Yon and Spawn, who already were going to be TL and Dig. And past that, previous AD talent had been promoted, like Lost, Tactical, and Neo kind of came from that. And you always if you're going to develop within the system, sometimes you just have years where some roles are not as good as others. It's jungle and NA, in which you're always the best role. This year for mid, I think was really unique in the fact that this past year, this was the most that I've ever seen challengers be used, probably for an individual position throughout the past year. If you look at the 16 teams we had in NACL Spring, we had Eminez and Diplex. There was Harry and APA, Insanity, Balulu. And I'll bring up Copy and Spyrax later because that's like the negative side of the coin. But there are a lot of mids that actually saw LCS play an opportunity. And fortunately, I mean, some of them worked out, right? Like the heart of the post is that like I think the most important thing for a league is having longevity. And I do want to challenge orgs to try and find ways to support imports, as I feel like a lot of them have failed to do so still. And in a year where resources are going to be less, considerably less, and it's likely around half the teams are going to be on LCS minimums, I think it's going to be harder to do that this upcoming year. I think that the conversation kind of got lost on like, it was like focused like around like why I'd say like import mid. Yeah, if I was going to import any role, it would be to import mid because a lot of the talent pool that we had was used. Now, there is the flip side of that, and that's some of the talent pool, and this is a negative, they ended up deciding to leave because they didn't feel like they had chances versus imports. Copy is a player that is the only player from the 100 Next roster that didn't see the LCS stage. He was really good on C9. When Fudge was role swap mid, I was very much advocating for Copy to be playing instead of Fudge. I felt like he was a stronger mid laner at the time. He was rank 1 on NA ladder. He was coming off of a Korean boot camp where he had 70% win rate and got like 1 KLP. And he was the best player, one of the best mid laners that we had in Academy for a year stretch, and then continued to be in the 2022. For me, like if you're top 3, you should at least see opportunities, because then you can see if I'm put in LCS. Like I was talking with APA about this earlier in the day. He's like, yeah, like when I played LCS scrims, I just learn more, right? Because you're playing against better competition. So in theory, if you're able in that level to be at the top, you should get opportunities at the next level at the top. Some of the top mid laners that we had did get those opportunities, and the ones that didn't decided to leave. And a lot of that is because they felt like they couldn't compete with imports. And to be fair, I mean, people were deciding to go with players like Quid instead of Copy and Spyrax, which sucks. Spyrax at the moment is playing top lane for Maryville. So he's still competing, but he's not playing mid anymore. Again, these are players like I would have advocated, like I believe our LCS level. I think that when I look at the mid lane talent pool and challengers compared to the other roles, I would say that like it's probably the weakest that we have. And Surdy is a player that I'm hoping to see in LCS. He's a top laner. He agreed. And a lot of that is because the pool was used. Like there were 3 players snatched up from challengers that are now starting in LCS squads this past year. That's great. So now, like we're trying to get more players in. The experienced players that are there are Harry Saligo. I think Harry deserves another LCS opportunity, and he absolutely smacked the challengers mid laners when he dropped back down after the APA swap. And then Ryoma. And then if you're going to take flyers on people, it's probably Shochi or Young. I hope those players get tryouts. But again, like I'm talking with GMs, like they view mid as a difficult role for them to fill this year. And the post was pretty much like, hey, if you're going to import, like let's just try and do it right, because like it's never happened before, right? And a lot of the discussion around Mask was like, I don't have faith in Immortals to do this. And to be fair, given Immortals' track record, yeah, I'd kind of agree. Kendi was a player I was really high on, and I watched his confidence evaporate on IMT like throughout his time there. That sucked for me to watch. But it's a new year. A lot of teams are going to have minimal resources. I think it's harder to incorporate imports, so that's going to be the case. But I mean, if you're going to commit, like I hope any and all players get set up for success. You don't never want to see a situation like Ruby. Like that sucks for Ruby, right? Like that's TSM doing like Insanity and Ruby dirty on that past split. So yeah, that was kind of like why I made the post, and it ended up getting big. I think people got stuck on the mid lane point I made, but it was more so to be like, hey, like can we actually do this right?
Yeah, one thing that I think your post reminded me to do, and obviously this is how I felt the whole way through, but I think it's really important whenever we talk about the import stuff to like, hey, be frustrated with the team for the decision that they're making, but don't be shitty to the player. Like, I don't want us to become the region where somebody comes here from another country and we're like, boo, go back home. You know, like go back to where you came. That is not what we as the LCS and LCS fans and everything should be. I do think that it is fair to be frustrated with teams when they build systems that don't create fans, where their answer is no, screw that person who's been an academy or an amateur or collegiate who we could build around. We got to go bring this other player over here and then have them leave after a year. Like, I am not frustrated about imports. I am frustrated about the way the league imports, which is the boomerang thing, right? Like, I am very curious to see what happens with Vikla and Prince. You know, I love the idea of those guys sticking around in North America and becoming the next core JJ, but I feel like there's a very good chance that they're going to become the next Perks, right? Come over, lots of fanfare, boom, they're gone. And that was why when NRG made it out of made it to quarterfinals, I made that post where I'm just like, you know, the fucking irony of this, right? Where, yeah, these players have taken so much shit from people for being at times mediocre. You know, I was frustrated at times with the way that CLG was roster building, etc. Though I am happy that they stuck around with the core year over year. But like whenever you see the Team Liquid thing is weird because I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, it's just all these Koreans. It's like, okay, that's not really what the case is. I think a lot of people who are more casual and or a little more racist are like, oh, it was just 5 players from Korea. They just did this. But whenever it becomes a whole thing where it's like, okay, well, we're going to get these Korean players and then we have to find people who speak Korean so that we can make it all Korean. Like, it's like, what are you optimizing for here? And especially if Summit Boomerangs, which I think is, I've not heard anything, but I would bet is probably what ends up happening because that's always what happens. And like, it is ironic to compare Team Liquid and what they did this year to the way that NRG invested. And in a year where, like, the biggest fucking thing is, in a year where these teams were like, oh no, Academy is useless and we can't invest in it and it's so bad and all that shit. And you see the results of Academy existing and having players that can dip down into it and become better for it, rather than just like fuck off and disappear because that system is not there to help them get better and improve again. Like these players go on and they make quarterfinals and they outperform, you know, the other 2 teams that don't quite frankly have players that have that type of story on them. So, and I know Jan and Harry came from Academy, but it's just like, let's say Harry doesn't play in the LCS next year. Let's say Jan doesn't play in the LCS next year. It's going to be really a big bummer if, because of the changes that were made to NACL this year, those guys don't have the ability to come back and be the next success story of the next contracts where people are sitting on Hotline League and Mark is talking about how amazing they are and how much they've been stomping people all year long, you know? So that's kind of where my head is at on all this stuff. I don't know, Mark, if you want to chime in. Oh, you're muted, Mark.
I think both are very understandable positions, and I think the one thing that we're aligned on unanimously is like, don't be a dick to the player, don't be like xenophobic and weird about it, and like the people that we're calling out are orgs for not looking domestically. And I think for me, I don't know who the fuck Mask is. I'll be honest, I don't know anything about this guy. I can't make a judge. Yeah, I haven't watched anything from him. I'm in Worlds mode. I see this announcement go out. I go, who? You know, like, I don't know if this guy's good or not. I look at his Leaguepedia. He's been on a lot of challenger teams. He's like, you know, maybe played. I don't even know if he's actually played for Hanwha or if he was like just there. You know, it says a couple of days. I don't know. So like, maybe he's crazy. I don't know. I don't know people's opinion of this guy. I've done zero research, and maybe I'll have a stronger opinion later. But to Cubby's point, like, it's not like the mid lane pool has tons of insano players, but like at the same time, to Travis's point, if this is going to be a Quid or a Ruby, then like, yeah, I'd rather see Young, I'd rather see Harry again, I'd rather see these guys who are in it for the long term in North America at the very least. So like, you know, I'll do my research and have a stronger opinion on it later about whether or not Immortals just signed some random prospect out of Korea who has, you know, one split with Europe in their ERLs, you know, and it's Ruby 2.0, or if it's actually a good signing, you know, like I don't really know. So I still agree that it's frustrating when you have what feels like just taking a shot on literally anything other than people who have come up through the scene. And to the point about, especially like now there's no academy, people who don't get a shot, I wonder what happens next year, because this is going to be the first year that there's no, at least since pre-franchising, no like clear, simple fallback of, well, I'll just go down to academy. You know, like now you're gonna
yeah.
have to find a team and actually make a roster of other people to try and perform in tier 2.
I mean, even before franchising, the system was almost arguably better because that was a team. That was teams had incentive. You know, Jack was sitting there grinding out academies so that he could make millions of dollars from the slans.
You had Steve's, yeah.
Or not the slans, but alongside the slans. So
it's weird because like I kind of sit here and like, I mean, I almost think that like this upcoming year, just like given all the changes to the space, like it almost feels like it's gonna be a third generation of players that are kind of gonna start to come up next year. I think that a lot of people that are fans of NA players are gonna get their wish and actually see a lot of new faces that will be in LCS, just given all the changes that like have happened to league budgets and a couple of the things I've been hearing behind the scenes, which again is great. Like I'm gonna root for our challengers players, like when they get a shot, and there are many challengers players that I feel like are still deserving an LCS opportunity, but. Yeah, if you're going to import someone, I think it's a lot harder to make sure that person's successful. And I would say that the majority of imports and situations in NA haven't worked out, and I hope they do in the future. Like, I mean, I want to see Eminez, Berserker, and Prince continue to play. Like, I think they're fun to have in NA, and I think longevity is like really the best thing you can do in like any sport, any league, to make sure you can latch on to players and teams. So yeah, like it sucks when people boomerang, but. There are steps to make sure like the native pipeline gets more chances and like has more opportunity, but also steps to make sure that that's the call that like you want to make. Then they're set up for success too. I know it's like going to be the kind of like devil's advocate or like minority opinion. It's not the popular opinion, but I want any and all players to be set up for success, and there are ways to go about that for like players that are different, like depending on like what their background is. So
I just think it's bold of you to think that there's any world where this like player does not come over here, suck, because you could put Faker on IMT and people would be like, man, that guy's washed. He's got to retire. And then
it's
like he's going to be here for 6 months to a year because like what is the revolutionary thing Immortals is going to unveil?
Travis,
and
you're missing the bright side here though, is that they are destroying a player's career that's not from North America at least. If anyone can go to Immortals and have their career be boomed, at least it's not an NA player.
Is it bad if I had an NA mid laner actually ping me that?
I would be shocked if
honestly,
this wasn't already the opinion of a lot of pros.
It is. That is what like I would love if the story that came out of this is the reason why Mask went over is because he doesn't understand. I mean, not for Mask, but if the story became they couldn't find talent because nobody would play for them. Because I mean that was the thing that I felt was so demonstrated by Revenge, and not like every single game he had this year was amazing, but when he went to EG, people were like, "Wow, this guy's pretty good." Every time anybody fucking leaves Immortals, wow, this guy's pretty good. And if the answer is they had to import because they couldn't get any of these NA players to like play for them, fucking good.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Mask doesn't know Pepe laugh is a great meme to start. Mask didn't know.
That is kind of funny. There is that, but also I don't know. Like I think the league's gonna look very different next year, and I think that like this usual placement of the standings we see, like if there's any year where it could shake up, I think next year is one of them because it's like a lot of, at least when I've been following LCS, it's like like there's more money involved, like teams are spending more. Whereas like the last 2 years, that's not been the case, and this is where it's going to hit hopefully a floor, because obviously we want things.
You can't go below minimum.
That's true.
Although
I'm hopeful.
100%. Okay, so we lost Jackie, and then immediately afterwards, the teams go to Riot, and it's like, oh, please take these academy teams from us. They're just cuffs around me. I can't afford. And then the new people are like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I guess we got to do it. So I'm waiting for next year where there's some new schmuck who takes the role, and they go to him or her, and they go, oh, please, these minimums, we can't afford 75K or whatever what it is now, I think. We please lower the minimum. I just I don't know anymore. All right, anyway, Kernel Panic, thank you for the call. Any shout outs that you want to make here at the end?
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to the show. Love having you guys on, or love watching you guys and having Cubby on here. The only guest better than Raz. And so I also want to shout out Alienware. I've got the Aurora R12. I got it in the discount code days before the link, alienware.com/Travis. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll catch you next time. All right, we got one more caller to go. Here's what I start doing. I'm going to shout out. Okay, so on Twitch, thank you to Hamster39. And on YouTube, no one to shout out. But can take that, YouTube. I'm playing you guys against each other. That's the new thing. Twitch, you're doing great. YouTube, don't know what to say about you guys. All right. YouTube, you should know Twitch chat is memeing you right now. Just so you know. All right, we got our next caller here, our last caller. Looks like
his voice, his microphone that might not be working. Oh,
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello. What is your what's your name, caller, and where are you calling from?
Slingo, and I'm calling from Apple Valley, California.
Oh, Apple Valley. All right. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I want to talk about how basically, and I think you're going to get a kick out of this because you've said this plenty of times in the past. Well, kind of. NRG performing better than C9 and TL, despite being an all-NA team, or I'm sorry, all-NA talent. Well, yeah, proves that the infrastructure on NA and the lack of a true path to pro is detrimental to the region. So basically, I have a couple of examples, but
so you're saying NRG is full NA talent?
Well, am I wrong about that?
How do you define NA talent?
Just well, people who have been in the system for an extraordinarily long time, similar to kind of like how Hui or Contracts has been, is a better example.
Okay. I mean, I guess extraordinary long time. FBI came over in 2020. Am I right, guys?
Sounds about right.
2019, because his 2020 split was his pop-off split. Maybe he came in 2020 spring. 2020 summer was when he beat Double Lift on that TSM team, and then they lost in the...
Yeah.
And Ignar has been around since 2019 as well. 2020 was FlyQuest back-to-back finals.
What are you talking about? Ignar's a Winter Fox player, Mark.
Oh, Lord. Flashbacks.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know when Ignar actually came over.
I know because he slummed it on like Immortals and stuff for a little bit. Okay,
he was
on
EG
Winter
as well.
Fox in 2015 for
Which
4
doesn't
months,
count.
and then he went to Incredible Miracle, KT, Misfits, Barbecue Olivers, then Schalke. He was there for a year. Then he came to FlyQuest November 2019.
Yeah, so that was the 2020 year, though, because he signed in 2019, but 2020 was the actual competitive year.
Sure,
so he's been here for 4 years.
So,
yeah,
FBI and Immortals been around the same amount of time. Yeah, maybe 3 or 4 years, depending on how you count it. I don't think I have a hard time considering either of them like North American talent. But I agree that they're not like fresh imports. You know, it's not like they were brought over from like T1 or something, a T1 Academy or something. So sorry, go back to, can you put the rest of your take a little bit more here, Slingo?
Yeah. If it helps, I do have actually I think a good example as far in Palafox. So he was trained through C9 Academy, correct?
Yes.
So if you think about how he, when he came into the LCS, he performed okay, but only improved the longer he stayed. Similar to kind of how Blabber came up. I know he came from Scouting Grounds, so it's a little different as far as I'm aware. I don't know exactly how. I think Palafox came through Scouting Grounds as well, which, if anything, that only shows more that having some kind of something like either local tournaments or Scouting Grounds, and I think personally Scouting Grounds was like the best thing for as far as a path to pro is concerned. Whereas like Palafox, he came through, correct me if I'm wrong, he came through Scouting Grounds, right?
I don't know where Palafox was picked up. Was it
Scouting Grounds?
At first, yeah.
Yeah.
No one knew who the fuck he was until Scouting Grounds.
Right. I'm one of those. I know when I did see him back on like C9 Academy, he was performing, and this is why I'd imagine he got picked up. He was performing really well as far as like an Academy standard. And then I don't remember exactly what team he came from because I know it wasn't C9. He went from C9 Academy to another team, and he performed, like I said, okay. But then he kind of improved, as we have seen now, with him being on NRG. And that just shows kind of how, like, from Scouting Grounds and then maintaining, and this is just one example. Like, you could have Delmonte or Berserker as another example, but that just kind of proves that keeping some player, well, not some player, but if you keep somebody from just, bouncing all over the freaking place, not including teams, but I'm saying as far as like going from academy, then back down to LCS, then academy, then LCS, then EU, and then coming back. That kind of thing is kind of detrimental as far as like, first of all, the player probably thinks that they're either not good enough to stay on one team or they feel like they've been let down. I'm not a player, obviously, so I have no idea for sure. But him staying on teams as far as like maintaining being in on a pro team in the mid lane and whatever lane, just kind of proves that he just staying with the same people can improve them to a point where, who knows? Worlds ain't over. I'm not predicting NRG is going to win Worlds, but who knows? It's not over yet.
I mean, okay, so it sounds like your central thesis is teams flip players too frequently, and that like committing to players and developing them is better than sort of the, not even setting aside the import thing, better than doing the whole merry-go-round that we see every offseason where people, I've started to think about it as like you're pulling a slot machine and you're seeing what 5 players show up on your roster, and then you go through the whole year, you see how it goes. Oh, we didn't win. So then you pull the slot machine lever again, and you see which 5 players pop up. It sounds like you're kind of saying, hey, teams need to commit to players in the long term.
Right. That's exactly actually what I'm thinking.
Great.
I know you've said that in the past.
So let's let Cubby and Mark here dive in a little bit, because I think people know that I am prone towards that line of thinking as well, but I don't know.
So NRG is a really interesting one. I don't know how Cubby feels, but I was actually thinking about this over the week about like, what do you call NRG? Are they a development roster or not? Because technically they first hit their success in summer. They had spring in 2022, where they brought up Palafox and Contracts, but they sucked. They got 9th place. They stuck with them, and they brought in Dokla. And then they got 4th in the regular season, but they kind of busted out in playoffs. And it was like, whoa, they did it with this group of guys. Like, that's really cool that they believed in them and didn't like blow up the roster after 9th place, and they kept Dokla. They go into next year with the exact same 5, and I think they got 5th in the regular season, and then, again, struggled in playoffs to do anything noteworthy, really. And then they made a roster change again, and they brought in FBI and Ignar, who Ignar wasn't even playing with FBI. It wasn't like this was a solid bot lane. It was the first time that these two guys played together. And then they win the split. So is that a point for sticking with your roster or a point for changing it? Because they changed their roster twice steadily every year, or once every year, to make these improvements.
I mean, in theory, that sounds like good team management to me, right? Like you're trying to figure out like what pieces can make you successful, and eventually they found an answer that like got them the trophy, right? Back when it was Luger and Poom, I kind of lovingly called this team like the Academy All-Stars, right? Because like when Contracts was playing with JoJo, Contracts was sick. Dokla was our most valuable prospect. Luger was the best AD when he got promoted. Poom was a really strong support in Academy when he got promoted, and Palafox was a touted prospect from the past. So I mean, I think somewhat yes. Like, there's no doubting that like Contracts and Palafox were grown in the system. Dokla as well, like spent time in the Oceanic region, but here. But I feel like they just made the like small moves to make sure that like things worked. I will also say that I think that the way that the game changed in summer helped them a lot. I said this when I was on Hotline League before, but going from Lucian Zeri meta to Kaisa, like Nautilus, Rel, Engage meta for Ignar and FBI helped out a lot. And I think that there was a clear difference with this team, like from the start of summer split later, not just because they did improve as players. I don't want to take that away from them, but also that is a wheelhouse where the bot lane's been more successful historically, especially Ignar. And I think that does matter.
I like Kelsey's point about 3 players in 2 years is still not that many compared to most that NA do.
That's very true.
Yep. And I will say, like, there's a trend. I'm trying to think through this because maybe I'm biasing myself. Maybe this is what the Team Liquids and 100 Thieves and stuff are doing, but I don't feel like it is. There's a trend of EG, Golden Guardians, NRG, I would even say C9 maybe a little bit of, small incremental changes over time, not doing anything too flashy, and then lifting a trophy at the end. You know, it's like, e.g., oh, maybe they bring Inspired over. That's kind of cool, but it's not as crazy as the. I mean, I feel like the year that LCS really jumped the shark was the Alphari Perks Sword Art year. And I think there has been, for many years, a lot of, let's just get really big name talent from other regions, do something really big. We're going to create this super team, blah, blah, blah. And what has been actually finding a lot of success is, you know, hey, look, we brought JoJo and Danny up and we paired them with Alphari, and wow, this is pretty good. Or, oh, look, it's Golden Guardians, and like people thought he was washed, but we had faith in him. We bring him over and we build out this team and we make a couple changes. Okay, we're going to bring River in, you know. It's, you know, a player who was already in North America, and let's keep him around. We think this player is better than maybe what he was able to do at Dig. And then, you know, NRG and CLG, hey, we're going to run back the same roster we had last year because they started looking good even if they didn't make Worlds. All right, maybe Spring didn't do what we wanted to, so let's swap out the bot lane. And let's not swap out the bot lane with like an EU player who couldn't find a team because his team didn't want to trade him to competition. It's let's swap out the bot lane with you know, a couple people that we think are undervalued. Like, these are the things that have been finding success in North America time and time again over the past 2 or so years, 3 years maybe, even depending on if you look far enough back. And I think that stuff continues to elude a lot of other GMs who feel like they have to go find some other way of doing it or some other way to game the system. And a lot of the stuff, like, I know what you're saying, Mark, about like, is this really development? But I think what it frequently is making a bet on the LCS system in one way or another, either players that have been in the system for a while or players that are coming up from Academy. And that's what it feels like this NRG team is, in a way that oftentimes some of these other things don't.
I think where I've landed in my head is that it's more about iterative roster building with the pieces. And like, anytime that you fully rebuild by like nuking all 5 or maybe nuking 4 and keeping 1, is that you're going to have no idea how the next 4 guys are going to pair together.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have 3 that you're working with and you're just swapping out a bot lane, you already know what your top side of the map needs to do. And so you're finding a bot lane that fits that identity, which is the benefit of iterating. So in that sense, maybe that's the bigger lesson, is not that like you stick with one set of guys for 2 years and develop them over and over again, but like figure out who your core pieces are and try and do that. And, you know, like Team Liquid sort of does, like core JJ's there every year, but it does feel like the roster identity changes around him.
Well, it's disappointing. I mean, the thing about Team Liquid that has started to tell me is just like this idea of every year we have to get a different import top laner and then really hope that this is the year where it sticks. You know, like, I am super fascinated to see who the next import top laner is that will come over here, be the defensive against the dark arts professor for 1 year, and then get cast out whenever it turns out that it's Voldemort.
What if they signed fake? What would you do if they signed Fake God? Would you just like, would your mind break?
Hang on. Let me look at a message I got earlier from somebody.
I think Fake God should have LCS opportunities for what it's worth.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my mind would break
if that happened, based off a message that you got about who TL's targeting for top lane.
Well, off of a general message. I can't say much else, but yeah.
Okay. I think, to get back to the call, somewhat agree, somewhat disagree. I think, like, I don't really like the idea of just not pretending that NRG approach was, you know, just sticking with guys. I think it was, yeah, they stuck with a couple guys, but they also did swap out a bunch of others as well. So I hope that what teams learn is not nuking their roster completely. And I think, if anything, it's about the fact that these guys were all, in essence, to me, air quotes, known quantities, and realizing that you can still get things out of people who hadn't been performing in other environments, which I think is the bigger annoyance for me. Is something I'm prone to thinking too, is like, you see a player in a bad situation where they look bad, and you think that that's that player's level from then on, and then they recover, which Licorice bounced back from. Pretty much everyone on NRG bounced back from, except
is a great example of
FBI.
this.
Yeah, Huhi's a good example. So like, I think if anything, that's the biggest lesson is like you just won a championship with a bunch of guys that you probably would think you could never win a championship with.
Yeah.
More so than anything.
Yeah. And by the way, the I feel like time and time again, the biggest way this happens is a player washes out of LCS, falls into the safety net of Academy, and then comes back up later on. And suddenly everybody's like, oh my God, they're great, you know? So, sorry, you were going to say something, Cubby?
No, I mean, also, this is all, I think that another aspect is that it's not just about the players here, too. Like, this has all been done with the same staff. It's only grown. And, like, props to CLG when they transitioned to NRG. Like, they fought really hard to keep everyone. And I think that's, like, I think that should be a success story for the staff. Like, that's tough. Like, you don't know what's going to happen when you transition orgs. The fact that they fought to keep it going and then won is pretty cool. I know, like, they've also added, obviously, there's a meme about their big staff, but G2's was the coach for CLG Academy. He did a really good job with a lot of the teams that didn't get the best playoff results, but like he developed Okla him, like on that team, helped him get back to where he was. And they were topping a lot of regular seasons. Their teams were really strong consistently. Like CLG and NRG like fought to keep him on board on top of the staff too. So it goes to more than just like making iterations with the roster itself. Like it's behind the scenes too. And whatever they found, it's been working. So I mean, more props to them and whoever's been behind the scenes, especially like fighting for that too.
Dude, I was thinking about that. I'm like, is Andy Miller just like bummed that his team is doing well because like he's like, well, fuck, now I got to keep all the support staff.
Speaking of large sports, it was funny to see the EU cope being like, oh, I guess the meta now is just like have really big support staffs. You know, like it worked this one time, so clearly the future is to have 8 coaches. I mean, maybe it is, but
I mean, it's funny because for like on the whole, LCS has been downsizing all these support. Like so many positions got eliminated over the course of this year. Like I don't think. I might be wrong, but my understanding, maybe Cubby, if you've heard this, a lot of teams got rid of the manager position. So there's a general manager, but like a lot of like Ben Zyper, for instance, was no longer the manager halfway through the year for Team Liquid. He became sort of like mascot or so. I don't know what it was, but I assume that was a very different role. And I heard a lot of other people got rid of like team managers, and then the GMs just took on those duties and stuff. So, and I think a lot of teams are having less coaches and less giant coaching staff and all that stuff. So I think that isn't, ironically, that isn't the meta. It's just that the NRG guys are kind of stuck around. So
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Ben is not catching strays. I'm just commenting on a change that I have seen. All right. Anyway, thank you to our caller here for their take. Is there anything you want to shout out here at the end?
Yeah, I want to shout out my buddy Thomas, my buddy Patrick, and my buddy Ryan, 2 of which have no idea what the hell this show's about. So I'll see you guys in a Discord call in a minute. Really quick, I wanted to bring up one more real quick point going on to that. Sure. What we were saying earlier. Berserker came from T1A, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of shows a little bit of like, I guess maybe not. I was going to say, it kind of shows like as far as if Korea's what are they called? Academy system is like performing people or bringing people up that are his caliber. How come to a certain degree can't we do that here? That's just food for how I wanted to
I think there's a whole other can of worms that I don't think we have time to
No,
get
I
into.
know.
It's a conversation
Right,
I have.
no, I
often.
didn't. I just wanted.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the call. We'll catch you next time.
Oh, thank you.
All right. That is the show. Happy Halloween, everybody. Cubby, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, you don't celebrate because you're a hater. And Mark is not celebrating, I don't think, either. So
you don't know what I do.
I mean, you told me you had nothing you were doing tonight, so I feel like I do know what you do.
Well, nothing that I can't shift around.
Oh, okay. You sacrificing some animal to a dark god?
Travis, I'm the one who likes cats, unlike you. This is a weird comment to make.
Actually, it's a Halloween thing. Like I was making it. You were like, I don't know what I'm doing. You're.
Yeah, it's just weird, Travis. You just ruined the mood.
Hey Mark, maybe we could ping Kobe. There's another caster that was in Challengers that recently adopted a cat, and it's very friendly. Kind of acts like a dog too.
Oh, and rub it in Travis's
it's,
face.
It's 4 months old. Very playful. Good vibes. It says hi to people.
All right, Mark, what do you want to plug?
Watch NRG get 3-2'd by Weibo on Thursday, or I guess Wednesday night. Stay up for it. Or if you're on the East Coast, wake up early, I guess. I don't know. But other than that, have a good time. Watching European fans, I'll be posting maybe a little bit on Twitter for some things to watch for NRG to rally behind them as the sole Western team left, best in the West. Do
you want to come over and watch that in my living room tomorrow?
Maybe.
Then you can be loud and rowdy and not disturb you.
You have bad juju, though. I don't know if I want to. We'll see.
What?
I don't know. I've been watching alone. Things have been going well.
Have they? They wrote well one time, I feel like.
It's so funny that we didn't do a mid-Swiss at one of these because after fucking Team Liquid lost to GAM, Travis and I were both like, fuck, we're going to have to do the same song and dance about how NA sucks and like we lost to a minor region and like should we lose our spot and blah, blah, blah. We were so ready to have that Hotline League. And then NRG saved our asses, and Europe fucking busted out so hard that we can totally gloss over the fact that TL lost to GAM.
Yeah. That's what I was saying was Mark's defense had always been like, well, we always outperform these wild card teams. That was like what we like all year long. We were just leaning on that. Anytime anybody was like, "They're North America should get rid of their seed. They're not even the fourth." And then it happened. I messaged Mark, and I'm like, "Oh, it's fucking Jover, man, our crutch." But it's fine. We'll just do this. Thank you to Bob and George over on YouTube for the membership just now, gifting a sub. And then on Twitch, we got Jaffe58 and Sneebin. Thank you, folks. Cubby, what do you want to promote?
Nothing. Thanks for having me, guys. My Twitter's CubbyXX for audio listeners, and same with Twitch. And yeah, this was fun. It's honestly a great time to be an NA fan because everyone probably thinks that NRG versus Weibo is the worst quarterfinals matchup, but for us, we get to put a lot of stock into it, and then just enjoy the rest of the sick matchups. It's awesome. We're high rolling right now.
For me, I will say two things. One, I'll be at BlizzCon this weekend, so if anybody wants to, if you're at BlizzCon and you see me, please come up and say hi, and please don't say, "Hey, Travis, I used to watch your content all the time," because I get that a lot these days, and it feels really bad. Secondly, shout out to Brandon Sanderson. We didn't do the normal spiel at the beginning of the show, but like I got to go to his house and draft his cube, which I'm pretty sure is worth over $500,000. And I did not realize until that night that like Magic is basically his second biggest passion. Like he has these like stickers on every single one. I knew it was huge for him, but he has like created a thing where all of the cards in his cube are like double-sided. He puts 2 cards in, and he has these little stickers printed on each of them. And this is like just tons and tons of cards where he's like modified it. And at one point in time, Brian Kibler went up to him and was like, "Oh, like this is weird or something." And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's a typo because I mistyped it when I was putting the stickers on." And I realized just how much, because it's not the $500,000 that it's like the most impressive. It's the amount of time. Like he has spent so much time building this, adding little stickers, doing all this stuff. And for him, the man with virtually no time, the fact that he spent so much on it made me realize I'm like, this might be the world's biggest Magic the Gathering fan. It was actually a really cool experience, and my hands were very nervous as they were holding some of these cards, which are worth bajillions of dollars. So it was just a really cool time, and I really enjoyed it. So shout out to Brandon Sanderson for that. Wow, Kibler shows up in chat and says, "Wow, I came just in time to hear myself mentioned." Exactly, you knew it was happening. All right, everybody, that's the show. We should be back just fine next Monday. I don't think there's any reason why we wouldn't be able to. So we're back to regular scheduled time Monday at 7. I'll probably hang out and stream for a little bit, but then I have to go over to Mark's and pick up some stuff that he got for me while I was gone. He port pirated for me. Thanks, Cubby, for coming on. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks YouTube for showing up for our first ever YouTube simulcast. We'll probably do this again next week, but thanks everyone. We'll catch you next time.